Are you interested in speaking up for the ocean on social media? You're going to want to watch this episode because I have Erica Hernandez, who is a personality on TikTok that I love to watch. She talks about climate. She talks about environmental science. She talks about wildlife conservation. She talks a lot, and it's great. And it's really wonderful to see how she's progressed over the years. She started talking about it over 2 years ago and has really developed a great account, lots of views on her videos, and she's kind of looking at different ways to do environmental messaging. And we talked to her about that. I talked to her about that on this episode, and I'm really excited to share that because I'm hoping that people who are maybe thinking about starting a channel or a profile or what have you, can take this and take some advice from Erica and myself on this because we had a great conversation, and to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to start one too. I'm going to start a profile, a TikTok account, an Instagram page, or start talking on YouTube or whatever that might be, podcast, and be able to check that out and see what can come out of that, see how your life changed with that. But we're going to talk about that on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And today we're going to be talking about speaking up for the ocean, something that I love to talk about. Science communication. It's probably one of the most important things in conservation, in my opinion, and it's the reason why I started this podcast, because people that I talk to just around my own life, like my own circles, my family, my friends, didn't really know a lot about what was happening in the ocean. And they would come to me and ask me great questions, but I was like, why aren't more people talking about the ocean? And I just realized at the time when I started, there weren't a lot of resources to find out about the ocean. There's a lot of competition for information these days. So I started a podcast that you're listening to right now, and now you have a resource to talk about ocean news or to hear about ocean news and how to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in starting some kind of profile, whether it be a TikTok account, an Instagram account, a podcast, a YouTube channel, this is, I said before, this is the episode for you, because Erica Hernandez, who has a profile on TikTok, talks about environmental science, climate change, all those great issues that we need more information on. She talks about on today's episode about why she started it, how her message has evolved, how her confidence has been building over the last 2 years with each and every video. We talk about like followers, we talk about commenters and how to deal with them. Just a lot of different things that has to do with social media. And I think it's really important because it's such an important tool. And I know a lot of people talk about being on social media, how it's bad for you, but wouldn't it be great if there's more great content on there? And I think that's really important. Erica does provide that great content. It's information. It's something that you can use. It's not only just on, this endangered species or that endangered species or this wildlife habitat. It has to do with just like how people can live by living just a little bit better for the planet, a little bit better for the ocean by buying clothes, like through thrifting, by just having a better lifestyle, a more sustainable lifestyle. Not that it's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Erica even mentions that she does this sort of imperfect kind of way of living. And I think it's really important to share that and to share how people can do to get better and what people do for a better, how people can live for a better planet. So with that said, here is the interview with Erica Hernandez talking about her TikTok account and her science communication. Enjoy the interview, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Erica, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about science
Yes,
communication?
yes, of course I
Nice. I love it. Look, this is exciting. I have been watching your TikTok account for quite some time. You are talking about climate change. You were talking about the environment, and it's a really interesting platform to be on because you can go like mega viral at times. Sometimes it's just, 10 views, a couple hundred views, but you're getting that constant connection with your audience. And that's what I really want to talk about today, answering questions from the audience and so forth, but really how you got to pick all that up and what your plans are in the future for this wonderful platform, as well as just science communication in general. So we're going to get into all that. But before we do, Erica, why don't you just let us know who you are and what you do?
Okay. My name is Erica. I'm 23. I have a degree in environmental science and a geology minor. I went to Appalachian State. And I'm currently going to work as a environmental justice organizer and researcher for clean water for NC, and I'm excited about that. And I've always just had an interest in environmentalism. I feel like it really sparked when I was in third grade.
Yeah.
And the way it started was I just saw a forest just totally cut down, and I don't know, something in me clicked, and I felt like I had to fix something. Like me personally, like it's such a
When you're
immense
8 years
amount of,
old.
yeah.
I love it.
hmm
So you had like, so did people come into your classroom? Like, did you have people like from an organization come into your classroom and talk about, different things you can take part of, or like plastic, or anything that had to do with the environment? Is that what you had? Or was this your teachers that were teaching you about this?
Mm, I feel like for teachers, they started talking more about climate change probably in middle school,
Okay.
but I don't, what really got me into it was just seeing that forest, and I just wanted to do
Mm,
more with I was just thinking of like the wildlife conservation, like where did the animals go? How do they adapt to human activity and how it's progressing over
yeah.
time? And in high school when we were applying to colleges, I was gonna go undecided because I really didn't know what I wanted. But then I forgot, like I had that spark. I'm like, environmental science. I feel like that's what I wanted to do.
That's really interesting. So you go back in memories, like, what do I really like? And then
Yeah, what
that's
do
what
I
you
really
remember.
like?
It just goes.
They say, yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, they say your inner child has all the answers you need. So I'm like, okay, my inner child wanted this, and I still want it now, and clearly I'm still into it.
I love it. I love it. Now, so going to Appalachian State, you're kind of discovering environmental science, right? Because, you're going back and thinking like, what can I do? What were your ideas as you're going through college? Like maybe at the beginning compared to at the end of how your sort of image change of what you could do in conservation or wildlife biology or environmental science.
hmm Well, like a lot of college students, when they first go in, they're kind of naive. And I knew the climate crisis and like human activity, environmentalism was depressing, but I didn't know it was that depressing when I started going into it and learning more about it. And a lot of the times I kind of wanted to just switch my majors because uh, I just
Mm,
I don't know,
interesting.
I can handle it. But I did always wanted to lean more towards wildlife conservation, and I'm still not where I want to do that at the moment, but hopefully in
Hmm.
the future. But like I said, there's so many topics within the environmental sector, climate change, environmental science. It's very broad, which is one thing I love about it because it's a very diverse degree. And I remember thinking when I was about to graduate, I'm like, "Ah, I feel like this degree is not going to help me. I feel like it's not worth it." But my advisor, like my teacher, she said, "No,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. This is a very good degree, and it's actually growing field, I believe. Like a lot of
Yeah.
companies are trying to be more green, and they really need environmental scientists. Um, and I feel like every job can be a climate job if you use what you know to help it."
Well, I mean, as you and I know, climate change affects everything we do. And it doesn't matter
Mhm.
if you're a marine scientist, a wildlife biologist, an environmental scientist, or you own a business, you're impacted by climate change. Your business is impacted by climate change.
Mhm.
Supply chains are impacted. Everything is impacted. We can't get away from it. And I think a lot of people
Mhm.
try to deny it so they don't have to worry about it, out of sight, out of mind. But we know now it's definitely not out of sight, and it's on our minds quite a bit. It's interesting, how you're talking about how you thought you were going to switch out, or you thought about switching out, because a lot of the things are heavy, like a lot of the issues are heavy, and there's no real like switch to be like, if we just, flip this switch, we're going to be fine. It's a lot heavier. Do you remember some of some of the issues that really got you down in terms of what you were learning?
Yes, I feel like for me, it's more endangered species. And I remember in
Mm,
one of my classes, you can't save all of them. And like essentially how biologists, I'm not sure who, but the way that they decide on which species deserves more protection is what they offer in a way. Like,
mm-hmm.
do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, which one brings more money to us? Like I was like, when I heard about that, I'm like, that's kind of depressing because you really can't save all the species, and that's what I want to do. But obviously, you can't, but you can try. And I think another one, I feel like would be just displacement because not everyone can just pick up and leave
Yeah.
where is better. Some people are gonna suffer. And I remember watching this, they showed us a documentary, and I tried to look for it again on YouTube, but I couldn't find it. And it was titled The Island That Disappeared. And it was some natives from an island that essentially sea level rise just kept getting worse and worse. And they were basically not being heard. And
Yeah.
essentially, they just had to deal with the consequences. And I just found that depressing.
It is. I mean, if
Hmm.
you think about people actually having to leave their homes
Hmm.
and leave their land that they've been living there for who knows how long, hundreds of years, like multiple
Hmm.
centuries, it's really depressing when you think about it. We don't think about it here in North America as much because it doesn't impact us, or it has impact family members as of yet. But there's definitely going to be times in the future where people on the coastline are going to have to move, and they're going to have to try and sell their homes, not going to be able to, and they're going to have to move to a different spot. And they are going to be what we're going to consider climate refugees, because they had to move with nothing because their homes are flooded, or they can't sell, and they move. The ones that can sell are going to be, or that are okay with leaving a home, are going to be like the super rich. And that's the people who don't really care, and they have most of the power.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating and depressing when you hear about that. But what made you, like, that's enough for a lot of people to turn off. Just like I know from my case with science communication, I started a YouTube channel when I was like maybe 14 years ago. And I remember my gym owner was like, "Yeah, I started watching your videos, and then I got depressed because you talked a lot about some like really depressing things. So I stopped watching it." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting to learn, like in terms of how you communicate that." But what was it that really kept you in it? Because I can understand a lot of people leaving the field even while you're learning, because you're in college. You're like, I want to make sure that I'm going to be happy with my job. I don't want to have to watch all these species leave. What made you stay in that field?
If I'm being so honest, I feel like it was the Lorax movie, where it's just unless someone like you
Oh,
cares an awful
wow. That
lot,
was such a good
unless
movie. Yeah.
yeah, but it makes me cry every time. It's like unless
Yeah.
someone like you cares a whole awful lot, things aren't gonna get better. It's really
Yep.
not. And I know because they say like I clearly believe there's power in numbers, and if we're being realistic, one person can make a difference, but it can only do so much. But still,
Hmm.
if everyone had that mindset, I feel like things really could turn around for the better. And yeah, I even have a sticker of it on my laptop. It literally has a quote, unless someone like you cares. Yeah, but that movie, I feel like it's really special to me. And um, I'm hoping the future doesn't look like that in the end where
Yeah.
people
Oh, I
forget
hope not
about it.
either. Yeah.
But it does leave some hope for
Yeah.
the future. And I feel like for me, I try not to let climate doomism get to me because
Yeah.
that gets a lot of people. And I know what it feels like to have climate doomism and like just to give up. Be like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for Mother Nature to kill us all. But
Yeah.
you just
No,
gotta
it's
pick
true.
up and continue. Yeah.
100%. I agree. I agree completely.
Mhm.
It's really interesting. My kids grew up on that movie too. They're
Mhm.
teenagers now. They still go back and watch that movie, and it's like there's some hard parts in it when you think about it. Because for me especially, I relate. I see it happening in real life, and it's not a far-fetched story. Maybe sort of like what's happened in the movie is far-fetched, maybe, hopefully. But just the message of it, if everybody has their own voice, they all stand up, you can change. I think that's really empowering, because I think we've seen that with climate change already. We saw the climate strikes happen, and we saw, starting off with one or two kids or three kids or four kids, and then it starts to grow and grow, and then we had millions of people around the world start to say, hey, like, we need change here. All the people who are in charge aren't changing. They're denying climate change, all this kind of stuff. And we know it's real, and so we need to do something. And now, if you look at many governments, although they can be criticized of not acting fast enough, a lot of them, like 10 years ago, weren't doing anything. And now they've got these major plans to do something. And like I said, they're not perfect by any means, but we're seeing those changes. And I do believe it's because people are standing up, and people are starting to mobilize and empower themselves to be like, look, yeah, I know I'm one person, but if everybody starts to talk, we all know the feeling. And so we're starting to see governments change, and we're starting to see that representation start to kind of fill out for people who are going to be more affected, and who are being affected right now. So I love that. I love the movie being like, yeah, this is it. This
Yeah.
is the movie that's going to kind of keep me into it. That's awesome. Now, you did a minor in geology.
Hmm.
Why geology? I have to know.
Oh.
I think it's a great field, complicated and complex in terms of what you're learning and stuff. But why? Those are two big things to learn about. Major environmental science,
Mhm.
minor in geology. Very, they mesh together quite well. But why? Why
Mhm.
geology?
Um, I'm not sure because when I was younger, I also wanted to do paleontology, and I could kind of get a
Okay.
little bit of taste with that because I could have got a I could have chose to get a degree in like some paleontology, but that's too much for me. I don't I don't know if I wanted it that bad. But yeah, when I got my degree in environmental science, I focused on life science, and then I got a
Yeah.
geology minor because I could get a little bit of both, because
Gotcha.
they do go well together. And I do love rocks. I used to collect rocks as a kid and color them.
Love it. Love
Hmm.
it. I love that. So and so that was more of like it's a fun thing to learn. Obviously usable in a lot of different fields as you go. So when you graduated, you got your life ahead of you. You've got your undergrad degree. What were you thinking? Like, what kind of area did you want to go? Because even environmental science is still quite a broad field, like to learn from. So What are you thinking?
Um, well, I was applying to jobs and I did get job offers, but the thing was they were in cities a bit away and I
Mm-hmm.
kind of needed to save up money at the moment to get an
Mm-hmm.
apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as I graduated, I just was an environmental educator at a local camp and I did that for a few
Nice.
months and I loved it. And
Nice.
then I worked as a restoration technician and now here I am about to start my new job, my big girl job, my
But I'll
big
tell
girl
you,
job.
like if you think about three very different jobs, if you think about like the
Hmm.
context, right? Um, Obviously, this one, the environmental justice one, is going to be new, so you haven't done that one yet. Out of the other two, which ones did you prefer or were most interested in?
The environmental educator.
Yeah, because I was working
Yeah.
with. How old were the kids that you were working with, or was it
It
adults as well?
actually, yeah, it was a very, because it was like during outdoor education season, so it was
Okay,
like 4 or 5 months, and essentially it was mainly elementary, middle school kids, but often on the weekends there would be conference groups that they would do their own
oh,
little
okay,
things.
yep,
But sometimes like we would do like environmental lessons for them, and I loved like we talked about water ecology, forest ecology, the water cycle, things like that, and also like having fun, which I thought it was fun because I was still using it still kind of relate it did relate to what I studied.
yeah,
And I during my undergrad, I also had two internships. One was an outreach, and it was mainly for like elementary school kids as well, and
right,
then a research one. But the one I enjoyed most was the outreach internship because, like a lot of people say, or the cliche saying, kids are the future. Like they if and what they know, they're gonna end up carrying
yep,
on with them in the future years. And surprisingly, a lot of the kids do love learning about
yeah.
the environment.
Well, I mean, it worked for you, right? It
Yeah.
worked for you. If you go back to grade three, you're like, yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to do, and I agree. I think that's one of the most important things to do. I think as science communicators now as well is this. It's to the people. Whether it doesn't matter what age group at this point. Obviously, young kids are. It's like an investment, right? You're investing into the future of education, so they don't come up and just learn or listen to anything that's said that's wrong and then they believe that. You want them to understand science, you want them to understand nature and what it can do, the potential, but also the consequence that we can have if we start to disturb it too much like we're doing now. So it's always great to see that. One thing you mentioned too about you had job offers that were away from where you lived. I think that's a really interesting point because I find I've had this a lot of times too. Growing up in Canada, there's a lot of jobs in the U.S. They offer you the job. You're like, okay, this is great. But then you're like, I'm far from home, and you got to look at lifestyle. You got to look at, what you want in terms of in the future, how you want to live your life. I think a lot of us, especially in marine biology, for me, you have to grow up along a coastline or you have to live along a coastline. And for me, my family's in Ontario where we have freshwater coastlines, but not ocean coastlines. And I chose to stay here, even though it was going to be challenging for my position in the future. But like, this is what came out of it was this podcast. But a lot of the jobs, they wouldn't offer enough to live in that city. Like and it's like, how do you expect me to survive? Or I'm not sure if you came across this, but the jobs weren't full time. They were like, a few months here or a few months there, or maybe a year or a year and a half. And that's a very difficult thing when you start to look at trying to live somewhere or trying to build a life somewhere. I don't think some of these organizations think about that. And it's probably due to funding and how long the funding is. But I find that's a really difficult thing to process when you first start out. I'm curious to hear your opinion on that type of like building a
Yeah.
lifestyle.
I agree. And especially within like the environmental sector, a lot of jobs are seasonal or
Mm-hmm.
it's based on funding or they're really, really competitive because they're just really competitive to get into. And I feel like that's not talked about enough. And I was grateful enough to have job opportunities
Of
and
course.
eventually get a job. And especially now because apparently the job market is really bad right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought it because I remember when I was applying like a few months ago when I was at my job, I was like, okay, because I knew I was there for just a little bit of time just to save money.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was trying to apply and I kept getting interviews, but then they just ghosted me. I'm like, is it me? But then I'm like, no, it's a lot of people. And
It's harsh out there
being
right now.
it's
It's
hard.
harsh. Yeah,
It's
it's
harsh.
a hard one. Yeah. So when did you start getting the I'm gonna pick up my phone and start talking about the environment bug? Like when did that really start to hit you and you started to create content?
I think my first environmental TikTok was talking about why blue whales are my favorite. And I think that was almost 2 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And I don't know, because I do remember actually the time when I was like, okay, I want to make content about environmentalism. And I told my boyfriend, I'm like, I want to do it. I'm like, yeah, you do it. You have the technology, you have the knowledge. Go ahead and try it. And I'm really glad I did because, like I said, I know my following is small, but I have like screenshots of every time someone messaged me on there saying, "Hey, thank you so much. I love your content. It gives me hope. Please don't stop posting. I hope one day you get like a million, like stuff like that." And it makes me feel good to post. Like for me, I love posting because I love it myself. But if
Yeah.
and other people loving it is just like a bonus.
Yeah, for
If it
sure.
means something to them.
Well, look, I'm here. You're just shy about 4,000 followers on TikTok. But I'm looking at like your videos and like I've done stuff on TikTok, not nearly as good as your content in my opinion, but you have like quite a few views on these videos. Like you're averaging probably around like, 5 to 800 on average. And then every once in a while I see
Yeah.
like a 10,000 or, 1,000 or 5,000. I think your highest is what? I see one here for 74,000 views
Yeah.
on this one video. And this is weekly positive
Oh yeah,
climate
my positive
news.
climate news.
I love these. And you have another one where you have 200,000. I didn't even realize it was right beside it. So, like when you first started out to now, how have things evolved in terms of like your messaging?
My messaging. I think my first for in terms of positive climate news, my first one posted, I put positive environmental news, and I probably should go back to that because some of the news I post on climate isn't really under the climate. It's a little more broad.
Gotcha.
Um, but because I know like the TikTok algorithm changes too, and that's not really on the creator's fault. And I'm trying to find different. I guess how I make my content is, I think, what would I want to see on my For You page? I know every now and then I do
Yeah.
some lifestyle videos, and I just usually just make content on what I don't see as much. A lot of
Right.
people post like some positive climate news, and they have their own way of doing it. And the
Yes.
way I do it, I just do like pictures and slides just to keep it short and sweet.
Yep. Yep.
And then some of my followers say you should try talking about them instead, and I'm like, maybe, but I don't. Maybe I might do that in the future. Maybe it might get more attention.
Well, and I mean, one good thing about being a scientist, which we both are, is you're okay with experimenting, right? Like, I mean, you put up. Everybody's going to have an opinion on what they'd like to see, and I think that's good. I think trying different things, and if somebody suggests something and you're willing to do it, or you're willing to try it, or you have the time to try it, because a lot of these things are not easy to put together, as I've noticed. I think it's interesting, like to experiment. Even like you said, to put these climate news where you put a picture and you just kind of swipe across for the different climate news, which is great because it's almost like you read articles and you're like, here's some cool
Mhm.
climate news you should know about. And you just summarize them so people are like, oh, this is nice because this is the positive stuff that we see. And it's like sometimes it's like, oh, another couple of countries signed on to, like
Mhm.
it could be like the ocean treaty, say, or what have you, right? It's just really cool stuff that people are like, oh, that's nice to know. That's nice to know. And they could share that with other people, who knows, or they could repost it or what have you, right? I find though a lot of people will have suggestions in a way to do things, and I know we feel pressure to do them, but then you're just like, well, I like doing my own stuff. It works within my
Mhm.
workflow because, like I said, sometimes it takes a long time to do it, but it's really cool. And one thing I really noticed too is you put in sort of your life, like you kind of mentioned your lifestyle into here,
Mhm.
right? And one of your most recent videos is your thrift clothes, and
My
it's like you,
thrifting. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of cool. You have like a fun style to your clothes. I don't know anything about style, right? I'm a 46-year-old dad, but you show off you like it's almost like a get ready with me or like, hey, look what I
Mhm.
got, and these are like nice looking clothes, and you're like, this was thrifted, this was thrifted, this was thrifted. Do you find
This shirt's
people get
thrifted.
that shirt's
Yeah.
thrifted? There you go. Now, do you find people get surprised at what you find in like through thrifting?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes I remember I got a comment. I posted like another type of thrifting video, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have such good luck. But it's probably because I go through every rack and I search everything, and I feel like people that say, oh, I never find anything, they're just
Yeah,
like you'd be surprised how much
yeah.
good stuff is at the thrift stores. And personally, I don't like to buy, even though it's from the thrift store, I try to avoid fast fashion brands because they usually don't last long regardless. And for me, I just like finding brands that are a little older just to have a little more sense of no one else is going to have this. It makes me feel like
Mm,
more unique.
yeah.
And yeah.
Fits your own personal style, right?
I like really colorful clothes,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm out, and I recently was starting thinking maybe I should start dressing my age, but I'm like, so far, I'm still gonna have my little style, but that's a problem for the future me.
But what do you mean by dressing your age? I'm curious about that. Like, is it you want to dress, quote unquote, more like professional, or is it like
In a
what
way.
is that? Because I feel like you've got a good style.
Hmm.
It's professional or not, or fine. Like, not everybody dresses professional every day.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I'm just curious, like what you mean by that.
I guess probably yeah, like more professional, or maybe it's because we're like social media gets to us, be like why are you like, or like where they say, oh my gosh, my frontal lobe is developing, I no longer find that cute, things like
Oh,
that. Because
gotcha,
I mean,
gotcha,
my style, I don't really wear that much crop tops anymore.
gotcha.
Just things like
I
that.
see.
And I do have some professional clothing, but I only wear that to like when I need to.
Yeah,
Like you said,
for
we don't
sure.
dress that all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, not many people do. I mean, people like to be relaxed and they like to be comfortable in their clothes. And sometimes the professional clothes is not as like I know that like when I wear a suit, I'm not as comfortable as if I'm wearing, like a nice pair of pants, or like even jeans or something like that. That makes me feel comfortable, right? So it's interesting though too. The reason why I asked is because I remember having somebody on because I had never thrifted before and I was trying to figure out like what it all meant. This was a couple of years ago. I've now started to do that, but a lot of like the person I had on in the interview, she was saying that she actually buys a lot of her um, clothes that she goes to conferences with, and she spends like less than $100 on an outfit, or maybe even a couple of outfits, and then she goes to these professional conferences, and people are like complimenting her on her styles and what she's wearing and things, and she's like, yeah, I barely spent any money on this. Not only that, but I know the clothes are used and it's better for the environment and all this kind of stuff. So I think a lot of people like I think this is kind of a thing now. I know
Hmm.
in my city we're starting to see more thrift stores pop up that have a lot of different styles and a lot of different brands. My kids like to do it as well, but they kind of search as well. You have to kind of search for that. I know what you mean by that. It's like search for that
Hmm.
unique kind of material. So I like that.
Yeah, I'm really glad for like secondhand fashion is getting popularity, especially like they even have apps now like Depop and whatnot, and I usually go on there too if I'm looking for something specific.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, I feel like a lot of people are into thrifting. I don't know if it's because people do it because it's in now. Because I remember thrifting used to be looked down upon a few years ago. Like it was
Yep.
like
Yep.
you're poor or like ew. Like I don't know. But now people are like, oh my gosh, like look at me, I'm thrifting.
Yeah.
But I've always loved thrifting, so.
Yeah, and I think I used to see it because it used to be like, like a Value Village or a Goodwill that we have up here, where it was for people who couldn't afford clothes, so they went and they got used clothes, and you would donate your used clothes there. But now I see a lot more stores popping up, like saying, no, here we are. It's like a thrift store. It's like, this is, come for these types of brands or what have you, and you see a lot more kids who are doing it and young adults who are doing it, and it feels like the fashion. Plus, like, things are expensive, so it makes sense to be able to buy something that's cheap but still quality made, which is nice to see. And I'll be honest, I tried to look for new clothes that are environmentally friendly, and they are crazy expensive. Like shirts that go for like t-shirts that go for like $30-$40, and just like,
Yep.
I can't afford that. I can't spend that on a t-shirt. There's no way. But anyway, that's good. So like, in terms of the messaging for what you do on like, when you do, is it just TikTok that you do, or do you do other social media platforms like Instagram?
I do post on Instagram occasionally, but it's usually the same
Right.
posts, specifically the ones I make on Canva, and every now and then I do post stories about like important
Okay.
environmental issues that are going around. But mainly TikTok is where I post at.
Okay.
And I'm recently I was starting to think of maybe posting on YouTube because I did have a YouTube channel before, but that was more like
Right.
me. But I don't know, but maybe I want to get more into it. I don't know. I just
Well,
love talking about. I love social media. I like.
I mean, that's good. That's where people are.
Mhm,
I mean, TikTok,
mhm.
I don't know how many users it has now. It's got to be over 1 billion users. And, not knowing what's going to happen in the future with TikTok in the US and other places, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see this platform grow and evolve. So now, like, from the beginning, when you first started a couple of years ago posting to now, how has your social media, like, messaging and like, or science communication evolved?
Like, how confident have I gotten? Brittany, is that what you're asking?
Let's start with that. How confident have you gotten?
I feel like I'm still on. I mean, it looks like I'm confident, but my videos, like, there's so many tries I do, or I stutter and I have to like edit. I'm like, I don't know why I cannot speak. But I feel like I've gotten better a little bit at editing. Recently, I've started using CapCut, and by recently, I mean like literally 4 days ago. Because recently, because I was just editing on the app itself,
Which is
and the
difficult.
CapCut,
It's not
no.
easy.
CapCut a little bit. CapCut is a little, I feel like a little more difficult because there's too much stuff on there, but
Right, right.
I'm
There's a lot
trying
more
to,
options. Yeah.
I'm trying to get the hang of it. And the message, can you explain a little more? Maybe I'm not getting it. Like my messaging, how has it
So I guess,
evolved from?
well, the confidence is a thing too. Like,
Mhm,
like, I know for me, when I first started, I had huge imposter syndrome, right? So
mhm,
when I first
mhm,
started and I would say stuff, I wouldn't even tell people that I published a podcast. I would just like do it and see who was listening and see how many. If I had a lot of people, I'd be like, ugh, I'm not sure. Cause like when I started, even like I started with a website and a YouTube channel, and then I went to podcasting because it was easier for me. But when I first started, I was very worried about being called out, and like scientists weren't talking about the work that they were doing because there was no incentive to do so, and there's almost a disincentive because people would take what you had and they would cut it to what they wanted to. So if you talked about climate change, people would like, or you did an interview about climate change, people would mess up the journalists, if you call them
mhm.
that, some of them, they would mess up your words. They would manipulate your words. So a lot of
Right.
scientists didn't have trust in talking to mainstream media. And so when I first started the podcast, the whole point was not to cut anything out, not to edit it, not to manipulate it, so that people would feel comfortable and to get like cool stories out. But I was so worried that scientists would be like, what are you doing? Like, you're not supposed to be doing this. Like, people are going to attack you all the time. And I realized after a while that people weren't attacking me, and other scientists supported me so much that they would come on, and then like, we're having so much fun, you should talk to this person, then you should talk to this person, then this person is doing it cool. And then I just started to get more and more people coming to chat. And I think through getting that acceptance and comments back being like, hey, like, you changed my life, or I'm really glad I never had this, I never knew about this before. And that kind of built my confidence now, where it's like, I feel guilty if I don't post an episode, because I'm like, that person who could learn about this, or I'll read an article like, oh, that's not that important. Then I'm like, no, it probably is probably important for somebody. And so I'll do an episode on it and I'll publish it. And then somebody responds like, I'm so glad you did that episode. I'm like, oh, I knew it. I knew someone's, but sometimes you're into it so much that you're like, oh, I've seen that so many times. Like, people don't want to talk about that. Then I'm like, once I publish it, people are like, I didn't know about this. And you're like, oh my God, okay, so it's still worth it. So that my confidence kind of like in the material and what to publish has changed from being like feeling like I'm an imposter in this field and not knowing what I'm talking about to trying to serve somebody by providing information for that person. And so it's less of about me and more about the audience that I have. So I got a little bit more confident in what I'm talking about. So that's sort of what I mean in terms of that.
I feel like I feel the same way in a way, actually. I think I posted a TikTok about vultures a few days ago, and then
Yep.
someone commented today recently, "Oh my God, where does those balloons come from?"
That's the video that happens all the time. I had to
Oh,
turn mine off. It's all good. It's all
I tell you
good.
what, I was like, where do those balloons come from?
Yeah. So if you
Uh,
do like if you move your hand and like it looks like a celebration, balloons and celebrations come on.
okay, I
If
was
you do
like,
like a heart shape will come out. It's so don't worry about it. You're all good.
okay, that's yeah. Essentially, they just said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know about this. Thank you. I learned so much from you." And yeah, I just like spreading information and environmental communications. It's like a good bridge between like the science and the community, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's not what there is a lot of.
Right.
So I like doing it to what I can in a way, and I like speaking on topics that what I feel are important.
Yeah, for sure. So what topics do you think like what do you like talking about the most? Like what the best?
Well, like I said before, I like talking about like different animals and species. Every now and then I do like it's blank day and I talk about that animal.
Oh,
Definitely the
gotcha.
positive climate news because I've been doing that continuously for like a year and a half now, and I haven't missed a single week. Even though the views don't bother me, I know some days like I don't get that many views. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
still gonna post them because some people still like seeing them, and I like seeing them too.
Yeah.
And those videos I like doing, and just if there's like a local or like a environmental issue that I know about or I'm aware of to a good knowledge, I usually speak out on that as well.
Nice.
And I was thinking of doing a TikTok. I think in Texas there was like a chemical power plant explosion right now. So I was like,
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's kind of
yeah,
that's scary.
I think that happened this morning, and I'm like, that's bad.
Yeah. Well, actually,
hmm
I'll be honest. One of the reasons actually we connected, and I never told anybody at the beginning, was you did a story on the Florida state parks recently, like
hmm
maybe like three,
hmm
4 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and you were talking about how the state wanted to be able to build or were having public comments on building these massive resorts, these golf courses, disc golf course too. I didn't know that was a big thing, but apparently that's a big thing, and they want to build in these beautiful state parks and they were giving like less than a week notice
hmm
of like these public comments. You told me you kind of let me know of that story through your content, and I was like, I gotta do an episode on this. And I mentioned you in
Oh,
the episode, and that's when
yeah.
I reached out. I'm like, hey, just to let you know, I mentioned
hmm
you in this episode because this is important. And so that's what I feel like. That's the cool thing. I also feel too, and I don't know if you ever noticed this, but like when we get on social media, and I don't know if it's just because so many people talk about it, and like there are a lot of celebrities out there that have like millions of followers, they get so many views, and even like the quote unquote TikTokers that are like huge. It's their
Yeah.
brand, right? They're the influencers of the world, and they get millions and millions of views. And then I look at mine, and I'm like, I got like only 100 views on this or 300 views on this. I'm like,
hmm
then I think to myself, that's like 300 people. Like if you
hmm
can fill a lecture hall with 300 people and it'll look busy, and you're just like, imagine if I had to speak in front of 300 people, for like 2 minutes of like an episode that I would do on TikTok, or even like 10, 20 minutes of an episode that I would do on the podcast. I was like, that's a lot of people to
hmm
connect with. And you never know who you're connecting with, right? It could
Nope.
be a decision maker. It could be the kid of a politician, who's like, hey, mom or dad, like you need to see this because this is important. And you may change somebody. You never know who's out there watching your content. And so I think that's quite interesting when it comes to that. Do you ever get that feeling though? Because you get you get a solid amount of views. Do you ever feel like sometimes you're like, oh, I wish that did better, but actually it hit a lot of people. Like it got to a lot of
Mhm.
people.
Yeah, I do. Like perspective is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And even likes, like let's say you get like 30 likes, like if 30 people went up to you and complimented on what you did, I'd feel like very happy. I'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. But yeah, I do feel that way. And also like some of my mutuals, like you and other people, like they're within the environmental sector field, and like I've
Mm-hmm.
connected like even like I've connected with people that advocate for animal rights, like they're
Mm-hmm.
vegans, or
Mm-hmm.
some of them work in like city planning, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And yeah, it's crazy like who people like who sees you. And even if they don't directly interact or well they do interact with let's say they repost it. Like a lot of people do repost my stuff and
Yeah.
it gets shown to other people.
Yep. I've
And
reposted your stuff quite a few times.
thank you.
So this is all good. Like this is great. Like it's interesting to see what you've done on here and what you're sort of able to do. Do you have like specific types? Like you talked about your weekly positive climate news, and that's cool. And that comes out like, is it once a week or a couple times a week? How many times do you do
Yeah,
that?
every Monday.
Every
I'm probably
Monday.
gonna post it later today. Yeah.
Okay, every Monday, yeah, because it's Monday today. Okay, cool. So you do that every Monday. Do you have other types of like? Do you say okay Mondays for this? One, I guess the first question: do you post every day?
I'm trying to. I think I have so far, but every now and then I have like a little streak and then I don't post for like 1 or 2 days and then I post again.
Yeah,
But I that's one of my goals. Like I'm trying to be more consistent with posting
right,
because that
right,
essentially is better for your performance because they get
right.
circulated more.
Still a lot of
And
work.
also,
Still a
yeah,
lot of
it's a lot
work.
of work. But usually what I do is I like bulk create. Like one day I
Yeah,
like make the same. I make videos of myself and sometimes I like change. So,
I do the
illusion.
same thing.
Sometimes
I've
I
done
change
that.
my shirt, but it's the same day to make you think that it's another day.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
And pattern wise, I know like I'm trying to have more like a schedule, but I know Mondays are weekly positive climate news. And essentially I just look at my feed and I try to have a weekly positive news, every now and then a Canva post, which is like something, it doesn't matter what topic it is, but it's just something I made on Canva.
Okay.
Every other now and then maybe like a video to show about me and yeah, some more.
So you have kind of like
Mhm.
pillars. So you have like the ocean
Yeah.
positive news, like a lifestyle thing, something that you make on like something that you try and experiment on Canva. Usually they have, and what you mean by that, like they have templates and you just kind of pick a template and then use it and then kind of fit it to the content that you want to put in. Is that what you do?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So
Mhm.
that's kind of cool. So you have those types of pillars. I think that's great. I mean, even posting a couple of times a year, I'm like, is pretty cool if you think about it. Because I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. But so looking into the future now, um, what do you want to accomplish with
What do I want to accomplish?
yeah, with just science communication in general? Like, are you gonna just stay on TikTok mostly and build that platform out? Are you going to like you mentioned a little bit of like maybe going back to YouTube? Like, what's your plan?
I do want to stick mainly to TikTok. I know they were saying like it might get banned and this, and that's part of the reason why some videos aren't performing as well as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to stay on TikTok, maybe more on YouTube, but
Yeah.
essentially I want to get more comfortable using the features that TikTok has. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
TikTok Live. I've been on it for a few times, but I only am on it for like 3 minutes or less because I get scared for some reason. Uh, so
Is it
I'm trying
because
to
like
like
you're worried about running out of content? Is that what you're worried about?
running out
That's
of
what I worry
content.
about.
Sometimes I do think about that, but especially like because I know I have a little bit of free time because I haven't started working my full-time job yet
Yeah.
because I've had like a
Yeah.
2 week gap just to enjoy. But I'm trying to like get as much done as possible,
Of
but
course.
it is kind of hard to do like social media while doing other stuff, and
100%.
that's why like it's a skill to have like time management and like having all that. So props to us because we do we do
Absolutely.
that.
It's
Yeah,
difficult. It's
props to
not
us.
like it takes I think a lot of people they don't realize how much time it takes to be able to get these videos up and to edit them and whatever software you're using to edit. Like it takes a long time and to put it up there and make sure you do a job that you think is like a good job, right? That's good enough for, like to put out for you. It does take a long time to do. So doing it with the job would be good. Now, is your job aware that you have like a TikTok account that gets some pretty good views? And do you think you'd feel comfortable in talking about some of the work you do to make people more aware of the organization and of the work that they're doing?
For sure, yeah. And I did tell them about that I do post
Yep.
on social media as like a little hobby for environmentalism. And they know my account, so they're not stalking me, but like they know. And and I'm pretty sure they're gonna know that I'm gonna talk about like what I do and to
Yeah.
gain more insight because I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to be doing research in like environmental justice communities within the state. And a lot of it has to do with like hog operations and how it affects some water qualities or
Ah,
streams nearby. And
gotcha.
yeah, I'd probably talk more about that as well.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
think it's great. I think more organizations that have their, I mean, they should show off their staff, in my opinion, because I
mhm,
love the people that work within the environmental field, and I find some organizations do it really, really well, and other organizations are so tight knit that they don't want to let any information because they want to control everything. But I like the fact that they let people talk, and let
mhm,
their staff talk because that's why you hire them. You hire them for their expertise, and so you let them
mhm,
talk on their expertise. So I love that. One question I haven't asked, and I've wanted to ask this for a while. You post a lot, you get a lot of views, you're going to get comments. Do you find most of your, and some people are always worried about comments, right?
mhm.
Like it could be really, really great, and you've started to mention some of them, but some of them can be like, especially when you deal with climate, a lot of times you get some whether they're real people or not, who knows, but you get some pretty harsh comments. How do you approach comments?
How do I approach them? I usually just delete them because I don't
Okay.
respond to them. Yeah, sometimes I think one time I do, but essentially how I see it, I'm like, wait a minute, this is my page, get out of here. So I just delete them. But
Okay.
I don't really get that many like negative comments.
Oh,
I would
good.
say I got them more when my weekly positive climate news were getting more traction. Like people
Uh,
would be like, they would say stuff like, well, what's the point? We're already dead, or
mm,
this isn't really good climate. Like I don't know, something like that.
yeah.
Or I think I made a video maybe like last year talking about like, oh, did you know if we killed animals, well, if we killed humans the same rate we killed animals, we'd be extinct in like 2 weeks, 14 days. And because I was talking about like how you can reduce your impact. Because I'm not a vegan, but I do my best to like,
Yep.
because I don't eat pork, I don't eat seafood. I mainly just eat chicken.
Hmm.
And and yeah, people were just saying like, oh, I'm gonna eat like a two burgers to like to the vegans think I'm like, just to cancel like stuff like that, just trolls. I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know,
It's just
they're
people trying to
annoying.
cause stuff, right? The trolls. I
Hmm.
mean, we've all seen it. I find every time I post anything on climate, I get somebody that's just like,
Hmm.
you should watch this YouTube video because this YouTube video sells everything. And I always laugh. I respond, I'm like, oh, thank you for sharing this YouTube video. I'll stop listening to the scientific, papers that are out there that are peer reviewed by other scientists, the top scientists, to watch this guy on this YouTube video talk about, how it's, a completely different theory. I always find that.
Oh
I always
gosh.
get that
Yeah.
every time I post it, right?
Hmm.
But no, I think that I think it's interesting because some people are afraid to talk on like these platforms because of the comments. So I think if I like that approach, it's like, look,
Hmm.
if I see these comments, I'm just going to delete them. They don't provide anything. I find some people who respond positively can actually help other people when they come to the comments be like, oh,
Hmm.
like people are really enjoying it here. Like this is fun. Like you can almost build a community. Do you find you hear from the same people or a lot of the same people commenting on like multiple videos, like building a little bit of an audience or a community?
Yeah, I do. I do feel like I have a good little community, and I do the same thing to their videos. Like we both
Yep.
do good interactions, and yeah, like I said, that's like the thing I love about social media. Like you never know who's watching, and some people have the same interests, connect with you, or they want to learn more about XYZ in the environmental sector. And I just feel like it's really heartwarming. That's like the thing I love
Yeah,
about social media. And I know it can be like social media can have its downsides, especially within
for
the
sure.
climate field.
Yep.
Because I know I would see these like videos that would trend, and it was just like all like negative, like a video of the polar bear starving on ice, thin
Hmm.
ice, litter. Like I know what they were trying to do, like to raise awareness, but that's not a good approach to do it
Yeah.
because like a lot of people just see it and they're like,
I
oh,
don't
we're
want to see
already
that.
dead, like they scroll.
Yeah.
But I feel like it should be a little bit of a good mix. Like that's why I do some environmental awareness and I do positive climate news because I feel like hope is like the biggest thing you can have right
Yes.
now.
Yep.
Um, like cautious climate optimism is like huge for me because I know because there's toxic positivity. It's not like, oh yeah, we're good, whatever. Like
Right.
you should still be aware of like what's going on, but still talk about like what's good because often like the news they hardly ever say anything about like what's good, so I have to like actually look for it. It's always like this explosion happened, this this much deforestation has like it's
Yeah.
always just they're just it's all negative, 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 and I'm like,
Yep.
ugh.
They love it because it's easy to click on, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like, look at this forest. It used to look like this. Now look what you click on here and find out what it
Mhm.
looks like. And people love to hear that. I find too, one of the things that I've discovered recently, and it's interviewing a few people, there are major projects out there that talk about like say the blue economy or blue carbon or climate. Like you see like the Paris Accord and everything like that, but you never hear about the projects that are actually happening from that. They never talk about some of the things. And so some of the interviews I've been doing, I've been digging deep into like, tell me a project that's come out of this agreement. And like, let's talk about those. And they're so cool. Like they're when you listen to it, you're like, I get excited. I'm just like, this is a cool thing. Why don't you talk about this? Why isn't this like front page on your website to say, look at this great thing? Like, there was a community, a fishing community in the Philippines where I was talking to the person who's from Rare. It's in the interview that we did a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about how they have this marine protected area that everybody it's managed by the government, but it's co-managed by the fishing village, and they have so they've been all contributing to this savings account. So like the whole village has this savings account in case there's like a typhoon or cyclone that comes through and it destroys the MPA. So they can't fish in the MPA because they want to get back, but they need money. So what they do is when they get that, they allow the MPA to recover and they dip into the savings, and they still have money to feed their families, to send their kids to school, all that kind of stuff. So by the time that the MPA is back and ready to go and they can start fishing again, they don't have to take from their savings account, but they have this savings account. I'm like, that's a cool thing. That's a good adaptation. That's good prep. And everybody I've told that story to is like, that's amazing. Like, that's so cool. Like, why don't we hear about this kind of stuff? And you're like, because they don't get out. Because it's almost like too good of news. So that's what I love about, sharing news that you share, like the weekly positive climate change news. I think that's cool because it makes me happy when I see that, because I'm like, oh, I didn't even know about this. Then I'll go searching. I'll be like, where did she find that? But finding those takes a long time, right? Like you said, you have to go digging a couple of times. So like, how long would you spend? Like, so you're going to do one today, say, how long would you spend looking for those types of stories?
So the way I do it, I always do them Sunday mornings.
Okay.
And then on Monday, I look for the images that it usually came from that are similar and save them. And then I post them. And I say sometimes it ranges between maybe like 25, 30 minutes. I'm better at it
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
but yeah, I usually try to do it in the morning of Sunday just so it's not too much of a hassle the
Yeah.
day of.
Well, and especially now that you're going to be working, it's going to be
Mhm.
like Sundays are going to be the day to
Yes.
do it. Right
hmm
on. Erica, last question for you. What would, if somebody's listening to this and they've wanted to start something where they start talking about something that's important to them, from a conservation standpoint, what would be the first recommendations that you would say, like the first steps that you would say that they should take when they consider starting to speak up for, say, the ocean or for just nature in general?
I would tell them, like, if they're nervous, just go ahead and do it because time will pass anyway. And if it's something that matters to you, I feel like it's probably going to matter to somebody else. You never know who also is thinking of that. And, just make sure you are getting the facts straight because some people, they don't mean to, but sometimes they do send like a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
misinformation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they're light, but still some
Yep.
people can call you out on that. And I would
Yep.
just say, just make sure you're doing it right, but also your passion will show. Like people will know if you're passionate about it, and that's gonna make them want to hear you more. Like if you
Yeah.
sound monotone or you talk about something, they're probably just gonna scroll. So I would
Yep.
just say, just if you love something, go for it. And don't be too nervous like me. Like I'm not nervous
We
anymore. At
all
the
are.
beginning, I was scared, but now
Yeah.
I'm like good. Now I'm good. I opened up now.
Yeah, no, but I think it takes some time, right? It takes some time
hmm
to kind of get that confidence and to be like, no, I'm doing this. Like now I'm looking at
hmm
other things I want to accomplish, not just getting them out there. And I always tell people, I'm like, when you do, I do the same thing. I'm like, just record. You don't have to post it, but record and have somebody watch it and be like, hey, what do you think? Like have someone close to you be like, what do you think? And I think that's really important to get a little bit of that boost of confidence. Like, yeah, you should post this. I didn't know about this, and then send it. And then you get better and better as you go through. Like I still mess up on words. I still do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can correct it. Sometimes not. We're all human. I find like social media allows us to be human and not like the perfect, cadence or the perfect way to say the words or anything like that. So I find that kind of nice. But anyway, love that advice. And I want to thank you so much, Erica, for not only for the work you do, but for coming on the podcast and talking about it. I think it's really great. I can't wait to see what you're going to create next and in the next year. Love to have you back on to talk more about not only the TikTok, maybe your job and what you're up to in this wonderful field. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. This is so fun. Now I'm no longer scared of being on a podcast.
This was her first podcast, people, and she did a fantastic job. I love it. So thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Erica, for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It was great to be able to talk to another science communicator, especially learning some of the tips and tricks that she has used on TikTok. And I think that's really important because TikTok is an interesting platform. I know we know all the controversy with, the app being owned by a company in China and the way that the US and Canada and as well as other countries have approached the app, trying to ban it, trying to worry about your information getting out to people who are not so in your corner, let's just say. And so there's a lot of, bad things that get talked about the platform, but there's still a lot of users on there, and there's people are on it each and every day, and they watch videos for multiple hours. So imagine being able to take up some of that time, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, 10 minutes. I think you can now post for 60 minutes. Not many people do, but imagine if you can do that and you can take some attention on the environment, right? And put it toward the environment. I think that's really important. I think that's something that we need more of, and we need more people on TikTok, on all the different platforms talking about the environment, because, my audience may not, some people who listen to my podcast may not hit the right note. It may not just be that right connection for them. They may, they may feel more of a connection towards Erica or towards some other creator that is doing some kind of creation on whatever platform that we have here on social media, YouTube, TikTok, podcast, whatever that might be. And so I think it's important to be able to, find all these different creators and be able to hear what they have to say and how they work. I think that's super important. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I think I thought it was really important to be able to have Erica on, and looking forward to having her back on. I'm going to put her link to her TikTok. The handle is at WhalesWee, so 2 E's. So whale, WHALES, WEE. And I'll put the link in the show notes, in the description, however you're watching this podcast. You can watch it on Spotify, which will be video. YouTube will be video, as well as all your podcast listening platforms, and your favorite one at that. And those will be audio as well. But you can leave a comment on Spotify, on YouTube, or you can hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. You can also hit me up on TikTok. My profile account is, once I find it, I don't remember what it is. It's Speak Up for Blue, at Speak Up for Blue. You can check that out. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. But thank you so much again, Erica, and thank you for listening and letting people know that, hey, if you want to know more about communicating on TikTok, send them this video or send this link to this episode, and I'd love to hear from them and hear what they think. But thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.